Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Abu Najma with kids. We learn Quran. We learn Quran. We learn Quran. We learn Quran. We learn Hadith. We learn Hadith. We learn Hadith. We learn Hadith. We learn the duas. We learn the duas. We learn the duas. We learn the duas. We love a prophet. We love a prophet. We love a prophet. We love a prophet. Abu Najma with kids. Abu Najma with kids. We learn Quran. We learn Quran. We learn Quran. We learn Quran. We learn Hadith.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and good evening. Welcome to the live real talk. Exactly 35 minutes past 8 p.m. And tonight we'll be talking about census, a topic that has raised eyebrows, raised emotions. It has become more emotive in this country, especially among the political class. From 37.7 million in 2009 to 47.6 million, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, on November 4th in 2019, Kenya's population was recorded to be 47,564,296. Of course, from the census process that happened 2 months ago. Tonight, to talk about census and the questions circumnavigating the whole topic, joining me is retired politician, former Mandera Senator, actually the first Mandera Senator, Honorable Bilokero. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Karibu sana mheshimiwa.
Asante.
We are so happy to have you and thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you.
Right into it. Do you believe in the figures? 47,564,296.
No, I don't.
Why not?
Well, I think I have questions regarding integrity of that of the data processing by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And so I don't. I think looking at the data more critically, you'll find inconsistencies. You'll find clearly that there was an attempt to try and doctor that data to favor, increase, if you will, some areas, numbers in some areas, or reduce numbers in certain areas. So I think that's why I don't think, or that's why I don't have confidence in the data.
Why would you say there were attempts to doctor? Is it something substantiated? Is it something that's proven?
No, it's proven. You'll prove it in courts, of course. But I think the let's look at it generally. Before the census figures started, government has been doing projections, including even the United Nations. In fact, the UN projections were that the population in Kenya would be around over 52 million. Even the government's own projections were around 50 million. And so the reason why, so you find the figures are, of course, well below that, but that's not the reason. The reason is you'll find a situation where in some areas the population figures have reduced substantially. In others, they have increased also substantially. So it doesn't really make sense. I think census has a process that is established globally by the UN guidelines on how to do census. And I think that is critical. The way that census is done, this government, when you look at the report that was published last week and given to the president by Kenya National Bureau of Standards, they said everything was perfect. Absolutely. If you read that report, they said they haven't had any problem. Everything was great. And they focused on, especially when you look at the quality control aspect on that report, they focused on the field work, on the transmission of the data, on the data collection, and so forth. But they have nowhere in their report have they talked about the data processing itself, the integrity of data processing, the transparency around that. And that is where the key area is. Because what happened for the first time this year, when the data is being collected by enumerators at home, and they upload that data to servers, which are kept off-site here in Nairobi, then the process was being done, everything was being done at the servers here. Yeah. And given the historical problems in this country regarding integrity in every aspect, including the elections, what happened in the IEBC servers. There's nothing that we cannot manipulate. There's nothing that we cannot doctor. And so when you start getting figures which don't make sense, your population this year is so much, the next year it's gone down. The next day your figures, and I am going to go into details of that later, but I think it's clear that there are discrepancies, that things don't add up. And I think that's why I'm saying that, in my view, those figures are not correct.
Those figures are not real. In your capacity as a leader, what have you done? Before we get into what you have done, maybe as a leader, or maybe you have summoned your fellow leaders and see how to look into this matter. Before we get into details of that, does that mean that the whole process was shambolic according to you? Or is this the result?
You see, the process involves the data collection out there in the field. The process involves transmission of that data to Nairobi. For me, the main issue is, and I've said this even in my previous interviews, that I don't think there was any problem in the collection of data. I don't think there was a problem in the transmission of data, because we all saw it. They've come to our homes, they have, taken the data properly and, and uploaded it in there, whatever, to Nairobi. So, second thing is that the people who are conducting, the enumerators, come from your area. Mm-hmm. So if you are coming, say, from Mandera, all the enumerators would be from Mandera, including their supervisors and all the, the team that were doing that work. So there is no one in any village, in any town, in this country who does not have a rough idea of what their numbers were, because the numbers were being counted there on a machine and uploaded. So you know that in your town, in your village, in your area, there's X number of people in X number of households who have been counted, and so your numbers would be around a certain number that you know. So when you now get the results that are substantially different, completely, and they don't make sense, and you can see that, and this is why I'm saying that those numbers don't add up.
Maybe before going further, Mheshimiwa, because this is an emotive issue, something that has raised eyebrows in lots of quarters. Not just leaders from the northeastern region have come out to disclaim to disown these numbers. We've seen leaders from Tharaka Nithi Central. We've seen leaders from Western Kenya, Western region of the country. Why would this be such an emotive issue in this country?
If you look at the theme for the last census, the government had a theme around that census. They said it's for development of services and development and devolution of services. What they say the theme was is that these numbers are required for the purpose of setting development agendas, planning, and number two, for devolution of services. So the government, by its own pronouncements, made it clear that this census would be significant because resource allocation, development planning, and everything to do with government services will be centered around numbers, populations, because you have to factor in populations when you are providing services. If you are building schools, hospitals, if you are allocating funds, particularly for revenue allocation to the counties, it's quite significant. For appointments to public service, our Constitution of 2010 gives a lot of prominence to two or three very important things. One, it's about inclusivity. And the 2010 Constitution is very clear that inclusivity is important, so that you take into consideration regions when making appointments, public appointments. You have to take ethnicity into consideration. when making public appointments. These are very important. And this census is about exactly that. It's numbers. It's about what are the numbers in a region, what are the numbers of the ethnicity, so that every year we have institutions. For example, the Public Service Commission annually conducts an audit of its employees in the public service. Mm-hmm. And they publish, and by ethnicity, they say how many people, what is the percentage of Somalis in the public service? What is the percentage of Kikuyus in the public service? They publish that report every year. And they do that because the Constitution requires them to us to be
to meet a certain threshold.
Equitable in terms of allocation of resources.
Yeah.
So what they do is when they publish that, they say this community is 17% in population, but the number they have in their representation in public service is 22%, and they say they are overrepresented. This other community, their population is maybe 1%, but they have even zero representation in public. So these things are important. And let's look at it. We're in Africa. Numbers are everything, not just in politics, not just in elections.
Exactly.
In everything, the numbers are important.
Just on the same point, on the same note, yes, the last census that was done in 2009 and the Constitution promulgated in 2010. So we expect the government and the Public Service Commission to be following that procedure. But how effective has it been ever since? I mean, why would we, even if we lament about these results and maybe the actual results come out, are we likely to see any difference? Are we likely to see any change? Because this is something that has been there and it's been existing since time immemorial.
You know, there is a perception by certain people in this country that you have more entitlement than others, or that you should have less entitlement because your numbers are low. So that even when the government makes public appointments, they will not consider certain regions or certain communities because there's that perception that these people are very few. And certain people must be given prominence because they are considered to be. So this is why in the Constitution in 2010 we made it very clear that there's no way that I will feel as a Kenyan, I will feel Kenyan unless I'm included in this country. And that inclusion requires that I must be considered. And this is why in every aspect, including in representation in parliament and everywhere, marginalized groups, every kind of people have been included in our constitution, so that people feel that they are part and parcel of this country. I think this is the theme. So what happens is that in 2009, when they did the census in 2009,
yes,
the government came up and said, figures in Northeastern, yes, you guys have cheated. Those numbers don't exist. You can't be 2 million. We got 2.3 million. They said, you can't be. You cooked the figures. I said, what do you mean? This is the first time since independence, 2009. This is the first time since independence that census has been done for a period of 7 days. In the past, it has always been one night.
True.
And in a pastoralist community, living in a region that is the most disadvantaged, the most marginalized, no access, no communication, people nomadic living in the wilderness, in the bush, who is going to go around in one night to count everybody with insecurity and all those? So they have always been undercounted. This is why the numbers before 2009 were low. So about 900,000 or about 1 million. Then in 1989, in 2009 for the first time, census was conducted over a period of 7 days. We organized, we mobilized resources, people were moved. Even those who have gone out to neighboring areas for pasture or whatever, government provided for it. It was the most organized census by the government itself. 2009. And when the figures came, they said, no, you guys, you can't be 2.3 million. So we said, what do you mean? So there's that perception. They said, you're just counting trees and animals. They don't care about northeastern or the northern parts of Kenya. So they said Turkana, northeastern, all those areas, your population is.
But there was a court order on a recount in that particular region.
Yeah. Then we went to court immediately when they attempted to cancel it. We went to the High Court. The court said, no, you can't. You have no evidence. So the numbers were upheld by the court. The government said, no way. We can't allow 2.3 million of these guys in this place. No, we can't allow. We went to Court of Appeal. So the government went to Court of Appeal. Again, in 2016, they lost. The government, the court said, we uphold that data, that information, those figures for Northeastern Province. If you guys are not happy with those figures, look for other figures to do your own whatever. But those figures must be used for delineation of boundaries. Those figures must be used. That's the court ruling And that's why in 2009, 2010, when they did the delimitation of the boundaries, they created more constituencies. The government was ordered to use those figures. And so 2016, the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal also upheld that decision. So it has been a long fight of many years. And this because of the determination of this government to reverse those figures. And so what they did, which shows you the discrimination, really, it's blatant. You know, what they did was the minister, when he attempted to cancel and the court said no, he went to Parliament and said, we want to use projection. We have smoothened the figures and we have done some projection. So they reduced every constituency in Northeastern Province by 40%. 40% across the board. And they submitted those figures to Parliament and asked Parliament, can you approve these figures? 40% in every constituency. So we went to the court. The court was very clear that there's no way those things can be used. Absolutely. So whatever you took to Parliament and when they tried to do a repeat or try to use projections, all that has been rejected by the court. And the courts, because of the UN requirements, that census must be based on enumerated figures. You cannot base it on projections. You cannot base it on, on your own. So there's this perception. And this is why they were hell-bent on reversing those figures in 2009. And this is why that feeling is there. And so when we realized that in village X, in town X, we were expecting this number because we were there when the figures were counted, and now they announced this, then we knew that these guys have doctored the figures. Something
fishy is being
planned. They doctored the figures big time.
Interesting.
Big time.
Monshimi, I'd like to hold you on that thought because we have to pay our bills and we're going on a break, very short break. Please do not go away because we are just getting started. In one of the interviews, you mentioned that you may be having rough numbers, rough ideas on the actual figures because you don't believe in this. You're distancing yourself from the report that was just released a couple of days ago, 4th of November. And you mentioned that you may have ideas. We want to know about those numbers, if they're verified and substantiated. All these and more, much more after the break.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا.
Ni kitabu kitukufu.
Qur'ani ni kitabu ambacho cha miujiza
kilichoteremshwa kwa mpangilio.
Hazikuletwa harufu hizi za mkato moja kwa moja.
Hakuna mfano wake.
Na hamwezi nyinyi Makureishi kuwa ni wenye kutunga kitabu kama hiki ingawa zimetumia harufu zile ambazo zimezitumia katika kuandika au katika kusema.
Miujiza yake Al-Malik.
Mwenyezi Mungu ana uwezo usiokuwa na kifano.
Ni malengo ya Qur'an.
Khazain zote za ardhi na samawati ziko mikononi mwake.
Sheikh Muhammad Badamana na uchambuzi wa Qur'an kwa undani kila Alhamisi saa 3 usiku kwenye Horizon TV.
Thanks so much for staying with us and welcome back to the second segment of the Live Real Talk. Moshimi, we were talking about census and the results. These are just the preliminary results that were released. Wouldn't you think it would be wiser to wait for the final result after the analysis to come out and then maybe we can come out and react based on that?
There is nothing called preliminary results in census. I've told you there is a guideline by the UN which is applied globally on how census is to be conducted. Mm-hmm. There is nothing called preliminary. Once the data, the census numbers have been published, that's it. Those are the final figures. there is what we call evaluation of the data, and they do that through what they call post-census evaluation, where they will try and, counter check in a few selected areas. But based on what we've seen in the previous year, the percentage of change on that is negligible. It's plus or minus small corrections. But what is important is that when the president received the report last week,
yes,
he announced very clearly that every government department and institution must use these figures immediately. That is his instruction. So it's not like if those are preliminary, then they would have said, these are temporary preliminary figures and we're waiting to finalize. But you can see the hurry. It's not 2 months since the census was completed. Last time in 2009, it took a year before the census figures were published. Here we were told it would take 3 months. But in 2 months, these things had to be published because of political expediency, these BBIs and other stories. So they had to try and get some votes, some support. So they are not preliminary. That's why we are concerned.
Are you trying to link the census to the BBI? Are you trying to say, in other words, that these results are being cooked so as to serve some political interest?
Well, I think I don't need to say it. I think it's pretty obvious. A week before the census results were published, leaders from central Kenya made very categorical statements regarding these numbers, that their support for BBI will depend on this, the one man, one vote, and their numbers and what they will get, and number of seats and parliamentary and so forth, and all of which is based on their numbers.
So the claims that...
so you can see the BBI report being shelved, and this one given priority. Nobody expected these numbers anytime until the end of November. But coming back to the earlier question before the break, you said
yes, we will get to that.
Yeah.
We will get to that. But just need to understand that the claim on these numbers being doctored, you see, is majorly for political reasons.
Of course. Numbers are everything, my friend. Numbers in Africa, numbers are everything. The largest ethnic community in the country will claim its resources commensurate with the numbers. But our constitution is also very clear that resource allocation in every aspect, whether it's recruitments, whether it's appointments or revolution or everything, it must be commensurate with your numbers. It's based on so the essence of equitability. Population has been a central issue. Particularly, I've seen lately on devolution, the agitation for, so it's not just on devolution of resources, in allocation of seats in parliament and in representation, in everything. So numbers are important, very important determinant in how the government allocates all types of resources.
Interesting. Maybe to be the devil's advocate, because we had extended an invite to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics to join us this evening, but due to unavoidable circumstances, they were not here. Maybe to be the devil's advocate, these results may have come earlier because this time the process were mainly electronic. So that is why these results would come out quite fast after 2 months.
Now, if you listen to the Director General in his recent interviews a couple of days ago, he said they are yet to do analysis of the data.
Exactly.
He was very categorical. They have not done any analysis on that data.
Because there were claims that some constituencies were going to be reduced. Based on the results of the
When we raised these issues, his answer was, you guys hold your horses. We are yet to analyze this data. Specifically, for example, when the numbers for Northeastern was raised, and he was asked live on TV, why were the numbers, for example, in Mandera, reducing by up to 18-20%? It doesn't make sense. By over 150 or 160,000. What happened? I mean, did those guys migrate? Did they die? What happened? Give the reasons. He said, we have not analyzed the data. We are yet to analyze the data to know exactly what happened. He repeated that yesterday in his press statement. So if you have not done any analysis to know the demographic dynamics or changes, why did you rush to announce the figures? Because that is the whole essence of this thing, is after you have done the data collection, is to do the process. The process involves analysis of the data. And analysis based on so many factors, including the birth rates, the fertility rates, the death, the migration, and so many factors.
Me trying to think out loud.
Yeah.
Why would the president issue a directive on all the ministry agents to start, excuse me, to start using the new figures? Would you think that would be a blessing in disguise? In what way? Because maybe the ministry from the planning and the government agencies from the planning, they were using the previous data and mere projections. And my assumption is that there is a general increase of more than 10 million. Because 37.7 to 47.6, that is quite a huge increase. That's a huge increase. So the president's directive for the agencies to use the new figures would be a blessing in disguise to the people who are allocated less resources from mere projections.
No,
do you think so?
No, absolutely. You have missed the point. There is no use of projected data in allocation of resources. That's by law. All allocation of resources, including for devolution, including for constituency creations, on everything, they are using the actual census results of 2009.
2009.
That's it. So there's nobody using projections, number one.
Okay.
Number two, why would the president be in a hurry to ask fellows to use data if, like you're saying, it's still preliminary? Well, it's because he's appealing to particular quotas. He's appealing to a particular quota, particularly in his backyard. That's where all the noise is. He wants the BBI support.
Wow.
I don't believe there's any other reason. They've been arguing for the last, from 2009, that is the constituency that has been up in arms, literally, at loggerheads, the president on the numbers. They're saying there are people whose numbers are low and they're getting more resources. And Central is suffering. We are not getting resources. And that has been the agitation all through. And this is why it's clear that this thing is political.
Interesting. Wow. And guys, don't you go away, because I'm being told we need to go for another break, of which I feel it's quite unfair. And my question that was supposed to be answered in this segment has not been answered. But do not go away. We will be back. Noor Ibrahim on YouTube says, MashaAllah, Mushimabilo. We are behind you. You are always there for us. May Allah grant you Jannah. Ameen. Why not me, man? Make dua for me as well. See you after the break.
You're watching Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Wake up to exciting mornings every day. Active Jumatatu with Muhammad Obura. Take Tuesday with Yusuf Farah.
800 million jobs will be lost to artificial intelligence.
Wednesday, the special edition Business Chat with Ibtisam Jamal. All about your health on Healthy Thursday with Mariam Mwacharo. Aisha Khan with thorny pertinent issues every Friday on the round table. Fresh discussions, direct probe in Sabah Show, only on Horizon TV. Wake up to exciting mornings every day. Active Jumatatu with Muhammad Obura. Take Tuesday with Yusuf Farah.
800 million jobs will be lost to artificial intelligence.
Wednesday, the special edition Business Chat with Ibtisam Jamal. All about your health on Healthy Thursday with Mariam Mwacharo. Aisha Khan with thorny pertinent issues every Friday on the round table. Fresh discussions, direct probe in Sabah Show, only on Horizon TV. Wake up to exciting mornings every day. Active Jumatatu with Muhammad Obura. Take Tuesday with Yusuf Farah.
800 million.
Kiumbe dhaifu lakini jasiri.
Alitunukiwa sura nzima.
Sura inayompa daraja yake inavyostahiki. Sharti ajigambe.
Naam, na pepo ipo chini ya nyayo zake.
Mpamba nyumba na nyoyo za wapendwa wake.
Anayebeba majukumu yake pasina kupinga.
Mtazamaji, je, unamfahamu anayezungumziwa?
Bila ya kusahau hadhi yake na haki zake.
Ungana nami Rahma Swaleh na Sheikh Juma Amir.
Tukuelimishe na kukupa mwelekeo katika maisha ya ndoa.
Kwenye kipindi Dira ya Mwanamke.
Usikose kutegea Dira ya Mwanamke Jumapili hii tarehe 6 mwezi wa Oktoba mwaka 2019 saa 2:30 usiku. Healthy Thursday is not just about diseases. It's about food, lifestyle, milestones in the medical practitioner's field, especially in our Muslim Ummah, and more so, your health. Discover breakthroughs and milestones in the medical field. Learn how to manage diseases.
That was not painful.
Join the discussion. Make better decisions.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Wake up to exciting mornings every day. Active Jumatatu with Muhammad Obura. Take Tuesday with Yusuf Farah. Wednesday, the special edition Business Chat with Ibtisam Jamal. All about your health on Healthy Thursdays with Mariam Mwacharo. Aisha Khan with thorny pertinent issues every Friday on the round table. Fresh discussions, direct probe in Sabah Show, only on Horizon TV.
Thank you so much. 7 minutes past 9 o'clock. This is the third and unfortunately the last segment of our show. Tonight with me tonight is Honorable Bilo Kero Moshimiwa. Welcome. So happy to have you in studio tonight. You have ideas, rough numbers, rough ideas on the estimated number, or rather the actual figure that were keyed in or expected?
No, you know, the government itself, when they published the 2009 census, they gave a lot of data. There is data that is always, statistics that is always provided by government on growth rates in every region and every community and so forth, in every region particularly. In terms of the fertility, in terms of the number of births per woman. You know, for example, the average number of births per woman below 49 years of age. In northeastern, the average was 7.1, according to the government's figures. 7.1. This year, I'm talking of the current figures they published when they released the report last week.
Yes.
Compare that to, for example, compare that to Central, which is 3.4%. So you can see it's double. In terms of the fertility rates, the same government published that information of 6.2 in northeastern, for example, compared to 2.8 in Central. Then you get the census done, and then you find the same Central, which has the lowest, the average number of families, 2 children per family, has got a much higher. Their numbers have grown up by over 30-40%.
That has a high fertility rate.
And the other region, which has got the highest number of growths by their own admission, have gone negative. That's one. Two, based on those figures they provided of growth and fertility in 2009, my own projections, the 2.3 million in Northeastern automatically comes to 4 million. Just based on those projections, that average family, based on the fertility rates and growth rates in Northeastern, if you apply those figures, the percentages they provided in the 2009 census, Northeastern would automatically just go from 2.3 to 4.
That's an
Central,
assumption.
based on the same data that they had provided of the growth rates and fertility rates for Central, they will grow in the 10 years from 4.4 million that Central's population was to by only 800,000. It should not go by more than 800,000. Yet their numbers have gone to 5.5 million. It's still the same 2.3. Actually, we went from 2.3 in Northeastern to 2.4. We increased by 100,000.
Might there be other factors maybe affecting the population apart from the fertility?
No, I think the single most important factor in population are two: birth rates and death rates. I mean, nothing else. I mean, you get new people, new people are born because children are counted, and some die. It's that. So there are no other factors which are more critical than those ones. The rest are immigration.
Maybe not critical, but there are other factors.
Of course.
Thank you so much. It's a key point.
For example, migration is there. There are other factors. But the most critical factor in determination of demographic dynamics is birth
rate and death rate.
Yeah.
Migration is another key factor.
It's a factor. It's not a key factor. I mean, the areas where migration rarely happens, but it depends on, for example, there is rural-urban migration. This is the argument that the Director General was giving, that, for example, in Kiambu, it's people are moving because it's become part of Nairobi.
Yes.
But when you look at now the other urban centers, Mombasa is an urban center, Kakamega is an urban center, Eldoret is an urban. Why are the other urban centers not having that same number, that same percentage of growth? I mean, it doesn't make sense. There must be. So in terms of addressing your question, yes, those were the figures we were expecting. And so when you're told now you're still at the same 2.3, then clearly it shows that there was manipulation of the data.
So it was just barely on, majorly rather, on projections, previous projections. That's why you're basing your perception. That's why you're basing your, I'm trying to look for the best word. That's why you're basing your thinking, your ideas, your numbers, the rough idea numbers, based on the projections that were earlier done.
Expectations. I've given you two reasons. One, based on the government's own statistics.
Yes, statistics.
If you take those figures,
which are merely projections,
it will come to 4, at least in Northeastern Province, or the former Northeastern. If you then also look at the numbers that have been taken in by the enumerators, I've told you that for the first time these guys were using these gadgets.
Thank
so
you so
every
much.
enumerator
Which
has
is
an
undisputed.
idea. Yeah.
Which is undisputed.
So you got an idea what number of people have been forwarded. Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's fair enough. On the other hand, an issue that you've said it's not as critical, just looking into things the way they are, facts the way they are. Our brothers from the Northeastern are the migrants in a lot of other regions in this country. We have a lot of Muslim brothers, Somali Muslim brothers in Migori who are originated from Northeastern. Same in Namanga, as my director is informing me right now. Same as in Namanga, which is an entirely Maasai area. Of course, originally Maasai area, but again, we have quite a sizable population there of Somalis as well. Nairobi,
every town.
Mombasa, a lot of towns. So don't you think the migration might have affected the numbers in a way?
Migration affects everywhere. It's not only the northeastern or Somalis. Everywhere. I mean, anybody, if you are in Migori, you're born there and you're not Somali, but you're a Luo from that area, you finished your school, you'll not come to Nairobi to look for a job. You'll probably go to Kisumu, you'll probably go to another town. So migration affects everyone. That dynamism is there. But the migration for Somalis cannot just happen suddenly in 2019 only. If it was there, wait a minute, if it was there in 2009, if you were here in Nairobi in 2009, Isli was as big as it was. Nairobi had the same number of people, more or less. Somalis were all over in Nairobi the same way they were today, until 10 years ago. Mombasa, they were there. Migori, Junaid was still an MP in 2000. They were there. But the same 2009 census, the number of Somalis that the government declared census for Somalis in outside Mandera, Wajir, Garissa was only 70,000 in the whole country, from Moyale, Isiolo, Nairobi, Namanga, Eldoret, Mombasa, everywhere. And this is a community you find in every. Isli alone, you will run into nearly 1 million. Yet in 2009 census, they say the total Somali population is 2.39. 2.310 is from Northeastern, 3 counties, 70,000 from here. So really, it's not it's not about immigration. It's about clearly based on the immigration factor they know how to take care of. Because if you migrate, you'll be counted in Nairobi. Immigration is about counting you where you are. What we're saying is that the number of people counted in those areas in northern Kenya cannot be the figure that they published of 2.4 million. That's basically what we're saying. It's more than that because we were there and we know what our numbers are. You cannot tell me in this office where you are, you don't know how many people work for you, how many people live in this office.
Okay.
You would know in your village how many people are there.
Thank you so much. That's fair enough. Moving forward, what do you expect now from the government?
Let me just mention also another thing which is important,
Please
maybe for our Muslim audience, because I think census is not just about numbers of population. There will be so many other data that will be published. One of the data that will be published is religion, because you'll be asked, I think you have been asked when by the enumerators, your religion.
Yes.
In the 2009 census, the number of Muslims was put at 4 million. 4 million. So in a population figure of 38.6, that was coming to 10.5%. 10.5%. If you walk to the streets of Nairobi and ask an ordinary Kenyan who's not a Muslim, what do you think is the population of Muslims in this country? He'll probably tell you they have 20, 30 or 40 because you'll see Muslims everywhere in this country. Everywhere in this country. So that's why as Muslims we have always believed that our numbers cannot be less than 25% in this country. But when the census is done, you are put at 10 that time, 4 million. And that 4 includes the 2.3 of Northeastern that they tried to cancel. And they said, 40% must be removed. Because
so the rest of the Muslims...
So that if that 40% was removed and we didn't go to court, the number of Muslims will be 2-point-something million. I mean, you'll tell an ordinary Kenyan that, there are only 2 million Muslims in this country. I mean, they tell you, are you joking? So, I mean, it has a lot of implications. The census... governments have a lot of reasons for data in this day and age is the single most important tool any government wants to control. Every type of data, and census or this demographic data is one of the most important tools that governments want to control. So it's really important that we get fair, and the government must be transparent about it because we are living in a country where integrity is a question. In everything, in our elections, in our public finance management, in everything. So we want to have transparency. We want census, according to the UN and all over the world, is about public confidence. The figures you publish as a government of census must really have that public confidence. People must say, yes, we have confidence in those figures because of the transparency in the way it was done.
Well, do you think in a way the government might be wanting to control this data or rather manage this data for security reasons or maybe for good reasons, maybe that cannot be disclosed?
Well, yeah. I personally believe that for Somalis it's about security. I think so. And for Somalis I have no doubt.
So do you think it's a positive move?
Well, I don't think it is. Because it depends on what type of security. Security it's not about the data integrity or security, that kind of thing you're talking about. It's about what if the Somalis become 10 million in this country? They would probably say we're the second largest, we're the largest community. That would run the risk of they would be concerned that then this Somalis would say this country is also, oh, it's just like Somalia, we are the largest. So the government is worried about so many other things that me and you don't worry about in terms of security. For me, that could be one of the reasons that the government is using to try and make sure that these numbers are not so high, particularly for some of this. So, but yeah, so security could be a reason.
Interesting. Moving forward, as leaders, as a leader, what are you likely to do? What
my advice, my advice is that the only option in this matter is the courts. That's why we have a court. That's why this is a country of a rule of law.
Immediately, or wait for the actual results to come out of the
There are no other results. Regarding enumeration, that thing is done. I've told you, there's nothing else you'll expect. You expect the government to say, okay, we are now coming up with the final. No, there will be nothing like that. When they do their post-evaluation smoothing, they'll be adjusting small figures of 10,000 here, 1,000 here. It's not going to change the numbers, but they've already announced that these numbers should be used. So I think, in my view, the best option is to go to courts and demand a scrutiny of the service, because that's important, and we have a right. Everyone has a right to, before the court, to demand that I want to have an audit of that server. I'm going to know whether that data has been manipulated, because I'm worried about the integrity of the data, because I know that my village, my town, my region cannot have that number, because we know the number that was counted. And then we have a good idea of what our number is, and based on your own projections of your own statistics on demographics, we also know what we ought to be. We haven't. So the best option is the court, and the court will be the best arbiter on these matters.
Which, of course, is likely to take long. The first case you took it in, the government took the case to court in 2009, and the final verdict at the Court of Appeal came in 2016. Yeah,
but the court immediately gave an injunction. I think in this case, obviously, I think the courts have to appreciate that if they don't give some sort of orders, then some people will be disadvantaged. If the current figures, if the new figures are going to be used, there are people who will lose their constituencies. Their constituencies, I was reading a constituency like Lagdera, was over 100,000. It's now reduced to 50,000. There is constituencies where the population have been reduced substantially, which means the risk, according to the constitution, when the delimitation of boundaries will be done next year, those constituencies will disappear. So, I mean, under the Bill of Rights, I cannot lose my right. I mean, for reasons which I can't understand, because my numbers are there, my people are there. So I am concerned about the way this data was processed, and so I want the court to give me some. So the court will, one way or the other,
protect you,
have to provide some remedy in this matter.
And of which that will automatically mean as well the directive from the executive to use those numbers to immediately start planning will be stalled.
Well, for those areas where people petition, not for across the country, but that's what happened in 2009. For those particular areas where we petitioned the court gave directive that in those particular areas you must use ABCD. You can't,
So to some extent, development of this country is going to be affected in
No, I don't think so. The rest of the country is not going to be affected. Those particular areas where people will go to court, that the court will give a remedy or will declare some orders.
But again, now we are getting we're getting an outro from almost all the regions. The other day we had from Northeast, and then recently leaders came out yesterday. We had leaders from Western, leaders from Central. Tarek needed to be specific.
I think if the government was really, really concerned, this census is not about government. It's about the people, for heaven's sake. It's a nation. Government has been elected by people to serve them. And if the people say we are concerned about these numbers, the government should accept. The least they can do is to form an independent audit team to come and audit. They can even ask the Auditor General, let us have an audit of this, of that data. Give him the service. What is the problem? If you have nothing to hide, why can't you allow an audit to be done, which will be faster than a court? These are computerized things. Everything is on a server.
Have you provided that option? Have you given them?
I mean, those are some of the options we have said publicly. Yes, we have demanded. Yes,
publicly. But have you followed the AG's office?
No, I'm not. But the leaders have made it clear that they want an audit to be done, and it's one of the options that they have put on the table. Please, I mean, if you have nothing to hide, allow an audit to be done by your own auditors. When government funds are audited, allow the figures to be looked at. It's not a complicated thing, and satisfy people that yes, your numbers are actually this, and this is what came in. I think it will be a faster process, but knowing this government, and it's not likely to do so, then people are keeping the options of courts ready.
Wow. Interesting. Mheshimiwa, wish you all the best. Because of time, we'd love to get your parting shot on this.
No, I think as a nation, we have to appreciate that population is very important in, as the government has said, in terms of resource allocations, all types of resources. In fact, it is so important that the risk of population being tampered with, not just by the way the government is saying, by the people out there, but by the government itself, the risk is so high that, in fact, in a country like India, for example, their allocation of resources to the counties, to the states, in their devolution, is based on 1973 census. They cannot allow census to be used after for the purpose of devolution, because they say then that would give rise to people, hyping figures. So I think that it is for me, what I can conclude with is that public trust or public confidence is critical in this exercise, and the government must win the confidence of the public, and the only way to do so is to allow an independent verification of that data.
Oh, interesting. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. Just to read something from Hamza Kasim, say, Bilokero, will you come back to the politics of Mandera? Since you left Mandera, development goes down. Hamza Kasim continues saying in another comment, Bilokero, we need you to contest for governorship because Mandera, we need someone like you who have an idea of the people. Mandera, you are the man with the ability. Of course, that's off the cuff. Would you want to respond to that, Mheshimiwa?
No.
You want to respond to that? Thank you so much, and we respect your decision. And that has been the live real talk. Let's wait and see what the leaders will do. Number one, Mheshimiwa told us that there were options presented to the Attorney General, and let's see what directive is going to follow. If not, the corridors of justice will see the feet of the leaders. Tonight, there is no ticket to slumber. I've been your host, Faisal Qasim. See you next week, same place, same time. This has been the live real talk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mheshimiwa, asante sana. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for making time for us. It's been amazing. And Mohammed Abdi posted something and then he deleted again.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.